Welcome to another episode of the Pound for Pound Boxing Report. I'm your host, Michael. Joining me this week, Shawn Newton joined us live from Taiwan, and we've had him on here before. I'm glad he's joining us again. The blackbird sugar of this YouTube shit, Mr. Natty Turtle. What's going on, fellas?
Not much.
What's good? What's good?
For those who are new to the Pound for Pound Boxing Report, I should say that Mr. Boxing Addict, he's scheduled to join us. He should be joining us later on. The Pound for Pound Boxing Report is a live YouTube show / podcast / blog that discusses all things boxing. The motto is, when boxing is good, we will talk about it. When boxing is bad, we will talk about it. The bottom line is, if it concerns boxing, we will talk about it. If you want to find information about the Pound for Pound Boxing Report, check out the blog page, P4P Boxing Report.wordpress.com is the link address, where you find articles and whatnot written by yours truly, as well as special contributors, Kayla M. Lewis on Twitter, KBC Live on Google Plus and YouTube, as well as an article coming up soon by Gail Falkenthal. She's giving her analysis of Mayweather Pacquiao, so that's coming soon. If not this week, I'll post it up later, sometime next week. If you check out the blog page as well on the right, you'll see links to where to find Pound for Pound Boxing Report all over the internets, the interweb, social media, on Facebook, on YouTube, or Google Plus, on Podomatic, where you'll find all the podcasts. On Tumblr, we got a Tumblr page, the Twitter account, at P4P Boxing Report is the Twitter handle. We got a Pinterest board. We're on Stitcher Radio. Just go to StitcherRadio.com. Just please check us out there. Just look for the Pound for Pound Boxing Report, P-O-U-N-D, the number 4, P-O-U-N-D Boxing Report. Check us out there and leave a review. Tell us what we're doing right with the show and how can we improve the show. We also got an RSS feed where you can subscribe to the Pound for Pound Boxing Report. Link to where you can donate your account, donateyouraccount.com/P4P Boxing Report. Your friend, be a copy of buddy, donate your Twitter account, and what happens is any tweet that comes from the Pound for Pound Boxing Report Twitter page, your Twitter account will automatically retweet any tweet that comes from the Pound for Pound Boxing Report Twitter page. And lastly, before we get the show started tonight, I've been saying it before, I'll say it again. April this month is Autism Awareness Month, and today specifically, April 16th, in which we're airing this show, taping this show, the campaign is to wear blue for Royal Blue for Autism Awareness. That's being sponsored. That's a campaign being sponsored by the Mocha Autism Network. Thanks, Shawn, for rocking the Royal Blue tonight. So again, Royal Blue for Autism Network. That's the campaign that's happening today. All part of Autism Awareness Month. Normally, I ask this question at the end of the show, since Mr. Natty Turner has to leave early tonight. Brother, where do folks can find you if they want to hit you up and talk boxing or anything else?
On Twitter, Blackbird Sugar on Twitter. You could catch me, Natty Turner, on Instagram and Facebook, and Mr. Natty Turner 1 on YouTube. Blackbird Sugar Boxing is the page, so check me out.
Yeah, check out his boxing page. It's a really good page. He gives an analysis of old school fights. And dare I say, the opening is really, really dope for his page. So check him out, Mr. Natty Turner, Blackbird Sugar.
Thank you very much.
Let's get the show started, fellas, by doing a recap of what went down this weekend. Headlined, of course, by the latest installment of the PBC on NBC card. This one happening at the Barclays Center in Brooklyn, New York. A lot of talk about the televised fights. Danny Garcia's win over Lamont Peterson, the draw between Andy Lee and Peter Quillin. I'll go to you, Natty Turner. Let's focus on Garcia. What many feel his controversial win over Lamont Peterson. I go to you on this because we had a discussion, you and I, on the homies EJ Boxing Live on his channel, talking about the fight Sunday. A lot of back and forth between you, I, EJ Boxing Live, Boxing Beats and Rhymes, and others in terms of who won. Varied accounts, varied opinions. Your analysis of Peterson, of Garcia Peterson. Your thoughts on what went down Saturday in Brooklyn?
I mean, there's not much more I could say that I didn't say on that chat, but just to reiterate, man, I just felt like as well as Peterson moved early on in the fight, he just didn't let his hands go quite enough in order to win those early rounds, in my opinion, man. Rounds 1 through 7 I gave to Garcia because the only real effective shots that were being landed, they were few and far between, but the only real effective shots that were being landed by Garcia, even though he was working very hard to land them. because, like I said, Peterson was moving beautifully. But what Peterson failed to do was counter effectively. You know what I'm saying? He was using he was kind of pawing with the jab sometimes. The jab wasn't really stiff. He was using it more to throw Garcia off balance. And he wasn't when he was making him miss, he wasn't making him pay. You know what I mean? You didn't see Garcia's head when Garcia swung and missed. You didn't see Garcia's head snapping back with a 1-2 from Peterson. You know what I'm saying, early on. So it was hard for me to give Peterson any of those early rounds. I understand. I think it was the round 3 or 4. I understand how some people could have gave him either round 3 or 4. I can't remember which one it was at the moment, but for me, the fight started for Peterson in round 8. And that's when he really took over. I think he gave away round 10, but he cleaned it up in round 11 and 12. And don't get me wrong, man. As you all know, man, I prefer the boxing style. You know what I'm saying? So that's what I enjoy looking at. But the thing is, he could have won those early rounds boxing on the back foot. He didn't need to actually come forward like he was doing later on in the fight in order to win those rounds. What he had to do was, while he was boxing, he had to fight as well, man. He had to let his hands go. He had to deliver some form of offense. You know what I mean? Not just make your opponent look silly and things of that nature. That's cool. That's cool. That he gets style points for that. But you have to land some shots as well.
Initially, when I saw the fight the first time, I had Peterson winning, and winning by in a close fight. After watching it for a second time, I must admit here that I had Garcia winning by 2 points. See, the question, and you made note of this point of this. Your thoughts on the fight depended largely on how did you feel Lamont Peterson did in the early rounds. If you felt he did an effective job of boxing, because he carried the second half of the fight, you felt that he won. If you felt that while he was boxing and moving, he wasn't making Garcia pay enough, you feel that he essentially didn't make up for the rounds that he lost early on. I took the latter position after watching the bout for a second time. My go to you on this one, Shawn. Mr. Natty Turner made his point. I made mine. Your thoughts, your view of Garcia Peterson. Do you think that Peterson, he did enough over the second half to pull it out, or do you think that he just didn't make up for the rounds that he lost early on?
I watched the show on the weekend that EJ put on, and after listening to Natty, I stopped watching it because basically I agreed exactly the same. I mean, that's how I saw the fight. I mean, it was nice. He used good movement, but he was ineffective. He didn't counter. When he was throwing his jab, the person countering was Garcia, countering with big shots over the top, also hitting with straight shots to the body and hitting the body when he could get close enough to throw shots. I mean, Peterson was dictating the fight, but he wasn't capitalizing on his opportunities. It looked like he was afraid to get involved with a give and take because he knows Garcia is dangerous early on, which is fine. I mean, at first I thought that's what he was going to do, basically give away the first 3 or 4 rounds and then pick it up, right? And I predicted that he would win the fight because he has a more, more game. He can play inside. He's a good inside fighter. He does very well, like when he fought Shawn, the French-Canadian fighter, and I mean, he did very well inside against him. And obviously his chin is a little shaky, as we've seen a couple times, like against Matthysse and a few other guys. He can get caught early and hurt. So I thought his strategy was good. I thought basically he's just going to dictate the tempo of the fight, frustrate Garcia, use movement, and then pick it up as the fight progressed. But I agree. I mean, he started picking it up in the 8th round, which was too late, And at that point, I mean, he looked like he was doing great, and it was sort of a shame that he waited so long before he sort of pushed his offense a little more. I mean, he can walk away with a fight thinking that he did well, but I mean, he didn't win. And if we're going to be scoring fights, I mean, we score it based on 12 rounds, and then we add the score up. And in that case, I mean, Garcia won, even though I wasn't picking Garcia, and I would have loved to see Peterson win the fight. But, you know, you can only score what you see. And what I saw was the same as Nadia. I thought Peterson just started too late.
I'll go back to you on this one, Natty Turner. Even though
let me
Garcia
say
got
this.
this. Go ahead.
Before you ask me that question, let me say this. Sean Newton does not make a habit of agreeing with me. Okay?
I don't make of disagreeing with you either.
Oh man, I'm just talking shit. Leave me alone.
I go back to you on this one, brother. That even though Garcia got the decision, let's face it, fellas, he did not look good. Just like in the Herrera fight, I will argue the Judah fight and some other fights, he faded late. I know a lot of it is due to the fact that he has issues making the weight. But the disturbing thing for me was not only the fact that he faded, it was also the fact that when you look at Garcia, the more you see him fight, I think the more you are seeing some deficiencies from him. He's being exposed a bit. And I go to you on this one, Natty. We kind of agreed Sunday that if you really force the pace towards Garcia, he's limited in his attack. He's limited in his defense. He can only do certain things. Do you think that Garcia, after the Matthysse bout, which he looked so good, do you think he has peaked, or do you think it's a situation where he may be in need of a new trainer to teach him some things?
A little bit of both. I think styles make fights, though. You know what I'm saying? Matthysse was a little. You see, when he's the more athletic guy, you know what I mean? When he has the superior speed, you know what I mean? When he can dictate how the fight is going, he looks a little bit better, man. But when somebody has a better skill set than him, or in the case of Mauricio Herrera, if somebody has a real good game plan going in and can force him to fight a fight that he's not used to fighting, he can look bad in there. You know what I mean? And it's hard for him to make the weight, like you mentioned before. It's hard for him to make the weight. And I believe partially it's his dad that's forcing him to keep at 140. You know what I mean? And it's kind of ruining him a little bit. You know what I mean? But yeah, he is a little bit limited in his skill set, and it's starting to tell from fight to fight.
I'm not going to go to you on this one, Shawn. The future of both guys. Will we see a rematch? Because of the fact that both guys struggled to make weight. I mean, let's face it. When Garcia came in the ring, he weighed 157 pounds. Peterson, he moved up an astonishing 165. Was basically a middleweight fighting a small super middleweight here.
Super middleweight. Yep.
Exactly. So, what's the future of this guy? Do you think it will be a rematch? And in terms of Garcia, because of what Natty Turner mentioned about the limitations of Garcia, his body is screaming for him to fight at welterweight. But when I look at him at the welterweight landscape, let's push aside Mayweather and Pacquiao, because he's not even close to being in the league. Let's look at the other top welterweights. Let's look at a Kell Brook. Let's look at a Thurman. Maidana, who's a welterweight, junior welterweight. Even a possibility of a rematch against Khan. Timothy Bradley. How do you see a Peterson, or especially a Danny Garcia, faring against the top welterweights in the world? So assess the future here.
Peterson, so heavy, and he still looks skinny. I mean, that guy could probably fight at light heavyweight. You know, both of those guys, they peaked at 140. Neither one of them is going to step up to 147 with that competition and be able to be elite. I mean, of course, there's styles that they're going to be able to do well against, but generally, I think they're going to be mid to lower level 147 fighters, which, you know, if that's what they want, I mean, there's some money to be made, right? And if they're smart in who they pick, they probably can push themselves and propel themselves to a good payday, especially with Heyman behind them. But at this point, I think they would be smart to have a rematch. I mean, they could push it to 147, have their first fight at welterweight against one another. They're both familiar with one another. They can make adjustments and prepare for what would be a good payday for both of them. Because, I mean, obviously there's lots of controversy around it, and people would be interested in see them go at it one more time. Just to give Peterson a chance to start a little early, and Garcia to work on his foot movement. His feet are so slow. That guy fights in mud, man. And I don't know if that's because he has to drain himself so much. I don't really think it is, because he always is pretty much a flat-footed fighter. But moving up to 147, he's going to have a hard time against those guys. I mean, who's he going to beat? Thurman? No. Porter? No. Khan?
Brooke? No.
I think Brooke? No. Khan, I think, beats him, but of course he still has a puncher's chance against him. But I mean, Khan knows that as well. So obviously he's going to fight a little different than he did the first fight. Bradley, that might be his best fight. Bradley likes to stand in there and be stupid and take away his best game plan. So against a guy like him, he might feed into his style of fight and make it better for him, make it more competitive. But really, I think Bradley beats him. I mean, if we want to go old school, maybe old Marquez, that would be a good fight because he doesn't use much foot movement, so he'd be right there to mix it up as well. And Danny's younger and bigger, so he should be able to have his way with him. But if he's going to fight any legitimate 147 fighter, especially guys in their prime, I just don't see him being able to do very much against them. And even at 140, I mean, there's a few guys there that I think would kick his ass as well.
Terence Crawford.
Away. And I think Matthysse would beat him in a rematch because I think Matthysse fought this way, and I think in a rematch he would be smarter. I mean, I think we'll see that against Ruslan this weekend. I think he will be smarter in the way he fights.
Quickly before we move on to talk Quillin and Lee, your thoughts on the future of both fighters, Natty Turner?
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty much in agreement with him. But the problem with that is they don't really have a choice at this point. They have to go to 147. Their body is not doing it anymore. You know what I mean? It just they're gonna have to give. Lamont Peterson was already forced to give up his title because he lost the fight. You know what I mean? Danny Garcia is gonna be forced to give up his title because his body's not gonna make that weight no more. Lamont Peterson, what, 31, 32 years old? Everybody's not DeMarcus Chop Corley in there. You know what I mean? And they're just not up there with the competition. And I agree that Timothy Bradley might be his easiest touch up there, but he's not guaranteed to win that fight either. He's not guaranteed to win against Guerrero. He's not guaranteed. I mean, Errol Spence will body bag that right now. You know what I'm saying? Right now. And he ain't even fought nobody yet. So, I mean, it's looking grim at 147, in my opinion, unless they prove to me different.
Yeah, I'm gonna go back to you, follow and talk about this next fight. Andy Lee fighting Peter Quillin on the undercard of Garcia and Peterson. This was supposed to be a title bout, but Quillin failed to make weight. In assessing this fight, Natty, when both fighters were willing to engage, it made for really good action. But the problem was there was too many periods of inactivity, and Quillin, who scored an early knockdown of Lee in round 1, scored another knockdown in round 3, I believe it was.
Yeah.
I didn't like his overly cautious approach because he had Lee. He had him hurt and hurt really bad, and whenever he landed a hard shot against him early, he hurt him and put him down. But the cautious approach kind of cost him at the end of the day and let Lee get back in the fight and let Lee land that right hook. And later on, to me, Lee started to catch up to Quillin, started to time him, started to land counter punches, did a better job of avoiding the shots. And that's really what saved him and got him that draw at the end of the night. So your assessment of Lee
I agree with
Quillin, and for me, passive approach of Peter Quillin.
I agree with you, man. There's a lot of excessive posing and posturing in there by both fighters, man. You know what I mean? Quillin was correct to be leery of Lee's power, however. You know what I'm saying? Lee does have very good power, man. He's like a strong punching middleweight. And I mean, I'm not sure if he's up there with Triple G because I've never been hit by any of them, but he can punch. You know what I'm saying? And we saw that in the fight when Quillin got knocked down himself. But I had the fight scored for Quillin, but again, it wasn't very controversial to me. I wasn't like upset that it was a draw or anything like that. You know what I mean? Quillin definitely allowed to get him back into the fight. I think he finished a little stronger, but he should have been doing that in the middle rounds as well. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know, man. I was kind of upset that Quillin didn't make the weight. But he has been off for over a year, and he's been doing all this outside activity outside the ring. You know what I'm saying? But I really wasn't surprised. But yeah, man, I think Andy Lee made a good account of himself, and I believe he I know this is off topic, but he beats Billy Joe Saunders easy work.
Oh, we could talk about that too. But I'll go to you on this with Shawn. Your assessment of Lee and Quillin and what you saw Saturday night.
Oh, Quillin is a bum. Man, you know, that fucking guy. You know, I predicted he would knock Lee out early. And I mean, it looked like my prediction was going to be spot on. And then he was just too inactive. He wouldn't do anything. He wouldn't push. I understand Lee's a big puncher, but you could throw a fucking jab to the chest. You could throw a body shot here and there. You could do something, you know, instead of like give away all the momentum and let this guy get back into the fight and on shaky ass legs too. Like just bump into him. Fight like, you know, many guys do. Fight like Porter. You know, go in. Up high guard, you know, bump into the dude, knock him off balance, get him against the ropes, throw it into him, do something. He looked like he had no outside game plan other than the one that he went in with, which I don't know what it was, which was basically there in counterpunch. I mean, you know, he is the favorite, you know, not the champion, not Lee, the guy who's been knocked out before and people know has a shaky chin. Like, he is the guy who people expect to win. People question why he gave the title up anyway, to miss out on one fighter to then fight the guy who beat that fighter, you know, and then he gets the chance to win the belt again, and he looks like he doesn't give a shit about the belt. He doesn't make weight. He doesn't care. You know, I think it's because his promoter doesn't give a fuck about the belts anyway. They're like, why do I want to pay sanctioning fee on something I'm not even going to show during the fight anyway? It's not going to get any press. They're not going to hold it up. They're not going to show it. It's just going to be ignored completely. So why pay anything on it? Why even worry about it? I think that's the way they do it.
I actually agree on that part as far as sanctioning fees. Who needs them to pay these ridiculous organizations, borderline crooked organizations, silly sanctioning fees?
You know, I mean, we all know the belts are bullshit, but it's a shame that he's going to, like, he's just going to create a new belt, which isn't going to clear things up. It's just going to make it one extra belt, which is just going to confuse things even more. But, you know, I mean, I'm just disappointed that Quillin, a guy who is one of the top 3 guys at 160, he's not really pushing it to the point where he cares. I just don't think his heart is into boxing. He's making some quick cash, and he's trying to get into acting and other things, and I think it just showed. I mean, Lee, he survived. Why? Because he had heart. And even though he was hurt, he refused to lose. And then he made the fight close that it became a draw. I mean, I have no problem with the decision. I mean, I have a problem with not being able to go out there and taking it from a guy who basically, you know, I don't even know if he's, well, okay, middleweight is not the strongest division, but I mean, he's like a lower level middleweight fighter. You know, I mean, a few years ago, would he even be ranked in the top 10? So, you know, and as far as Saunders is going to box the shit out of him. So, you know, that fight, he better run away.
Please make that fight. Please make that fight.
I tend to disagree with that. I know Saunders, he beat Eubank Jr., but I still have questions about him. I'm sorry. I do.
Saunders barely beat Eubank Jr., and I don't think he won, to be completely honest.
You guys
I thought he won.
He won the fight.
I thought he won, but if that would have been a 15-round fight, Billy Joe Saunders would have been in trouble.
Man, because Billy Joe, look at Billy Joe Saunders after that fight. He wasn't even sure if he won or not.
Oh, come on. We know that Eubank, a 168 fighter, hits hard. And
Well, Eubank sucks. At least he sucked in that fight.
yeah,
He was throwing Eugen punches.
Boxed and moved and used the jab and didn't let him land his punches until he got worn down and tired in the second half. And then Eubank started to land those crazy uppercuts a little bit more. But I mean, that's not enough to win. It's the same as Garcia Peterson. You know, you can't win just by throwing a few punches here and there and then doing well in the back half of the fight. He lost the first 7 rounds of that fight. And I mean, Lee, who, you know, I mean, don't get me wrong, I like Lee, and he did much better when he used his jab and used a little movement and got a little flashy and got on his toes, because Quillin, man, shows that he's not willing to move. You know,
but here's the component I think you're missing, and we'll move on. I was going to say, here's the component I think you're missing, and we can move on. I think that because Saunders is not the biggest puncher in the world, Lee will not be as cautious to move in. And I think he can get in, get the good jab, and start throwing power punches. And we still don't know what kind of chin that Billy Joe Saunders really has, because he hasn't faced anybody with the power of Andy Lee, particularly the power in that right hook.
And who knows how to throw the punch. He's not going to throw no Ayukin punches. He's going to throw some straight left hands and nice right hooks. He's gonna use the Razor Ruddock smash from the right hand side. You know what I'm saying? And when that touches the shin, I don't know if Billy Joe gonna stand up to that.
It's true. We don't know what he's gonna do, but I mean, we also know that Lee doesn't have a great chin. So even though he doesn't have big power, he can still get hurt by another guy. I mean, we know that Lee's chin is shaky. We don't know Saunders. I mean, who has
Lee been knocked out by? Who has Lee been knocked out by?
He was demolished by Chavez. Demolished.
What I'm saying is, for the first 7 rounds, he was outboxing Chavez. Chavez came into that fight as a cruiserweight, man. It was only a matter of time.
Yeah,
it was only a matter of time.
There's an asterisk there, because everybody knows Chavez really fighting, wasn't really a middleweight. He was basically a light heavyweight coming down.
Man, look, man, you come into a middleweight fight at 180 pounds plus. Come on, man.
Nowadays,
ridiculous.
Now the Jackson fight, I could give you something there, but I always have to put a qualifier when it comes to Chavez Jr. because he was so massive.
Well, John Jack,
Julian Jackson's son.
And you know what? He was beating Andy Lee pretty convincingly, but
not as good as Saunders.
What happened was, I mean, I mentioned this in my video. I seen it on tape. What happened was he tripped over John's foot, so it looked like he was hurt, and he wasn't. So he went in with his hands down and clipped. Good night. Good night.
Absolutely.
This dude has crazy power.
Yeah. Let's move on, fellas, and talk about. I'm gonna go to you on this one, Matty Turner, because we're gonna talk about our boy next. The fighter you and I both love, and we've been champion for a while now, Errol Spence Jr. He scored a knockout over. Let me look it up right quick.
Vargas. I think it's his
last name was Vargas.
I think he's Canadian.
Knocked him out. Samuel Vargas knocked him out in 4 rounds. Put him down in round 2. Finished him off with body punches in the 4th. Here's the thing, Natty. A lot of people are not giving him credit for the win over Vargas, but when you look at Vargas' record, he's a pretty decent guy. Never been down before. Had a good reputation coming in, but more to the point, it was the way that Errol Spence Jr. looked. I think he has a complete arsenal. He's a real good body puncher for that division. I think he has really good size for that division. And to me, he's a guy, it may not be one thing that he does that's spectacular, but I think it's the overall combination when it comes to Errol Spence that makes him an elite prospect in my mind.
That's why I compared him to Mike McCallum, not because of they fight the same, but because they do all of these things so well. There's nothing specific that really stands out. Not, oh, he's a power puncher, or he's just lightning quick, or he's just this or that. He just does a whole lot of things well, and he puts it together well, man. So his skill set is world class. He just has to test it against world class competition to be absolutely sure. You know what I'm saying? But I'm riding with him. I'm definitely riding with him, man. And this.
And so am I. And I go ahead. I'm sorry.
To me, this fight was very impressive because nobody else has done this to this guy at all. Even if he has a couple of losses and a draw on his record, those guys that beat him did not do what Errol Spence did. So he's going above and beyond what he's supposed to do to his opponents.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm riding with him as well. I've said it before here on the show, and I've said it on other shows. I said it actually Sunday night. Everybody talk about what Keith Thurman wants to do next. My thing is, hold off on Keith Thurman. Let him sit back and fight whoever until 2016, because in 2016, give Errol Spence some seasoning, give him a top 10, top 15 guy. I think he will pass the test. But I want to see Keith Thurman, Errol Spence Jr. in 2016. And I will go to you on this one, Shawn. Your thoughts on Errol Spence Jr., his ability as a fighter, and his potential. Did you see world champion?
Oh, I mean, everybody sees that, so that's not a surprise. I just think it's funny when people talk like it's from news. I mean, yeah, he's one of the top 2 young and up-and-coming guys in boxing who people all predict is going to be a world champion within the next year.
I say that, Shawn, because Matty Turner and I was talking about him Saturday night on Twitter, and we had a guy chime in basically say, hold off on him. Who has he fought? He hasn't fought anybody yet. Essentially implying that he's not that good.
Well, I mean, I think what that guy's saying is true, too. I mean, people tend to hype some guys and then rip other dudes that get hyped. I mean, he's getting hyped. Obviously hyped because he shows lots of potential, and a lot of it's the myth from what happens in sparring with big-name guys. We never saw the results, but we've heard, knocking down Broner, hurting Floyd, all these things which sort of...
Knocking down Floyd. I have it on good account. From my sources, that he actually did knock down Floyd in sparring, and that he did beat up on Freddie Roach actually said he beat up.
I really don't even pay attention to that shit, to be honest with you.
Oh, I know, but I mean, people, they hear this and it sort of builds up the mythology, right? Be on top of a fighter. It's good stories, sort of like the good Venezuelan fighter. All the great wars he had in the gym.
Edwin Valero, I mean, people heard great things about him. Never saw him do anything in the ring, but just all this mythology that came with him about his power, beating up everybody, and then, he went on and did well. But he looked limited as far as, like, his upside. But, I mean, he had good skills. Spence, we still have to see him get in with a guy who's ranked in the top 30. I mean, anybody that at least has a big win or done something. I mean, obviously that's going to be what happens. I mean, they're bringing him along slowly, building him up. It'd be nice. They should throw him up with a guy like Guerrero. I mean, Guerrero's seasoned, lots of skills, but he's not super fast. He doesn't have super power, and I mean, you can make some mistakes against him. And he tends to get into brawls and not be technical for a whole fight. But he's not an easy pushover either. So I mean, that would be an excellent fight for him. And then after that, Yeah.
And Devin Alexander. I'll take Devin Alexander.
Sure, Devin Alexander. But Devin, he's a boxer. He can make it an ugly fight. The problem with Berto, who's Berto? Berto's fucking done. Berto is a hype job that never done anything. And, people base their career on beating him, but he never beat anybody. I mean, fine, we can throw him against Berto, but I mean, that doesn't mean anything because Berto's just going to lay against the ropes and hope to land a big shot and get his ass beat for, how many rounds it takes before he gets stopped. I mean, a guy like Guerrero, I mean, we've seen him, like against Thurman, he got hurt, but he showed that he has the ability to adapt and adjust and last. So, he's a little more versatile, so that would be a good fight as well. But, we're all excited. I mean, boxing is all about the new guys, like all sports, right? It's great to see the young up-and-comers come, all the hype behind them, and then see if they can, go past it and make a name for themselves bigger than anyone expected, or if they're just going to sort of fade into oblivion. With him, I mean, the hype is because we see him being so skilled. All his Thurman fights, I mean, everyone loves to throw Thurman under the bus so quick. I mean, Thurman, he's still just a guy developing, but in 147, who's better than him?
I'm
Not
not
many
four guys.
people. Not many people, man.
not many people. And I'm not necessarily throwing him under the bus. I just think the way that both guys fight, I think the skill set of Errol Spence matches up very well against a Thurman.
Yeah.
Because of
But
that.
we never saw Spence get hit by a real puncher.
That's why I say give him time. Give him a year.
Yeah, you don't want to become a star off fighting a bum. You want to be a star off fighting somebody that's high caliber, high echelon. You know what I'm saying? And beating Thurman would give him lots of credit.
That's why I say it's only with a guy like Guerrero. You know, I mean, obviously Guerrero's not Thurman, but I mean, you know, we built those fights.
Yeah, definitely. Not yet.
Boxing fans love to get the big fights right away, and they don't want to wait and let anything mature. You know, it's like making a good pasta sauce. You need to, like, take time and let it, like, you know, develop flavor. And the problem is now everybody's so quick to want this fight right away. You know, like UFC, they all want the big names, like, all the time.
Like I'll wait till 2016 for it because he has fights out there for this year. We're still early. You know what I mean? I hear that he's fighting on the 20th, so hopefully that's somebody that we know.
20th of May?
Of June, I think.
June.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's move on, fellas. All the talk about the PBC on NBC card, specifically Garcia's win over Lamont Peterson, kind of cast a shadow over what happened this past week. Also cast a shadow over, as far as I was concerned, the fight of the week, as Orlando Salido defended his WBO Jr lightweight belt against former champion Rocky Martinez in San Juan. I don't know if either of you guys saw the fight, but Martinez ended up defeating
oh, really?
Salido by unanimous. Yeah, Martinez actually beat Salido by unanimous decision.
Yeah, I missed that fight.
Well of a fight. Yeah, Martinez knocked Salido down in round 2. Round 3 also in round 5. And for me, Salido, he rallied late, but it just wasn't enough at the end of the day. I don't know if you saw the fight, Shawn, but I'll go to you on this. The thing that impressed me about, I underestimated Rocky Martinez. I thought he wasn't much. I thought that Salido, who's a true tester, who if you don't get in, he's the type of guy that if you don't show any heart, if you don't show any toughness, Salido will punk you out. But Martinez strong. He stood strong, and whenever Salido tried to make a rally, Martinez was able to hurt him with a right hand to kind of thwart the momentum. So I'll go to you on this one, Shawn. If you saw the fight, your analysis of Rocky Martinez win over Salido, becoming the WBO Jr lightweight champion for the 3rd time.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with a lot of people. I thought Salido would win after watching Rocky's last couple fights, especially against Garcia, where he just looked like he was inactive and, you know, he wasn't able to up his game, right, to step up a level. But I guess this just shows Garcia what a good fighter he is, that he was able to make him look like such a punk and really take away any offense that he had. You know, Salido, he's older, smaller fighter, but, you know, in the last couple fights, these things haven't mattered. He showed that he has heart and he's able to, you know, push hard and like you say, punk dudes and make it tough on them. And if guys don't have the heart, they're not going to be able to get the win against him. So it was great testament for Rocky to be able to go in there and get some revenge for Puerto Rico after, you know, one of their heroes lost twice to him there. You know, this is like, I'm sure Puerto Rico's proud to finally get a win off that guy. You know, and for Salido, I mean, you know, it's not a bad way to go out. He moved up because he just got lazy in training and couldn't keep his weight down, and he moved up, won a title, and then he lost to a guy who's a former champion. So, and not too old and still has a lot left in the tank. So hopefully Rocky can make some good fights in the future, keep up the momentum. Salido, maybe it's a good time to just slide into retirement.
I know you didn't see the fight, Natty Turner, but kind of your immediate reaction upon hearing the news that Martinez indeed beat Salido.
I didn't see the fight. I'm not really surprised that Rocky beat him. Because Rocky's a better fighter than Orlando Salido is, and he's younger, faster, and Salido is pretty much on his last leg right now. and yes, and he's much bigger. Salido has fought at featherweight for a long time. I think he fought Marquez like back in the day on the Bernard Hopkins De La Hoya undercard. He's been campaigning at that weight for a long time, so he's used to being the big man at featherweight. You know what I'm saying? So now he's up there. He should have moved up years ago, and now he's up there with these bigger guys. You know what I'm saying? It was only gonna catch up to him sooner or later, and he fought one of the top dudes up there, and you know, this is what happens, man. I don't remember who he won the title from, but he wasn't Rocky Martinez. You know what I'm saying? At all. He wasn't on that level. So I'm not really surprised that he lost to him.
I'll go to you on this one, Shawn, since you were on the YouTube boxing scene. Shinzuki Yamanaka, current WBC champion at 118, I feel is the best bantamweight in the world. He scored a win earlier today, defeating an Argentine fighter by the name of Centillion. Knocked him out 32 seconds in round 7. Did you see the fight?
I didn't. I didn't know it was on already.
Oh, okay.
I have something to do today.
Yeah, okay. So we could. I was wondering if you saw the fight. The fight happened earlier today, so we can hold off and talk about that possibly next week. Let's move on into the news. Kind of breaking news yesterday, as apparently Sergey Kovalev kind of pulled out of negotiations for a bout with Adonis Stevenson. I'm a little bit surprised by this, Natty. Your thoughts on this news in terms of Kovalev, who's been calling out Stevenson, Kathy Duva's been calling out Stevenson and whatnot. But yeah, when it comes to the negotiating table, they kind of pulled out yesterday. Now they tried to come back today, try to hammer out a deal. But your thoughts on the initial news of Kovalev pulling out of that fight, pulling out of the negotiations table?
I was pretty shocked by that, man. All the shit they was talking. I know they have some reasons. You know, basically they don't want Al Heyman in control of the event. That's basically what it is, and there is no way they're going to win a purse bid against Al Heyman. That being said, you want to play with the big boys, you got to be able to come to the table with big boy money. You know what I'm saying? If you want your fighter to, you know what I'm saying, if you want to control these events and things like that, you got to be able to, you know, play with the high rollers, and that's not Al Heyman's fault if you can't play with the high rollers. You know what I mean? I mean, it's not his responsibility to hold your hand or anything like that. So basically, the purse bid was called right before it even got started. They pull out. You know what I mean? And this is not the actions of somebody who wants to make a fight. It's like I think I heard somebody else in the video say it's like, you know, the bully is punching, poking at you and poking at you and poking at you, and as soon as you turn around and say, "What's up?" don't want to fight no more. You know what I mean? This is ridiculous. Obviously, Adonis Stevenson and his side want to fight now. You know what I mean? I know he was getting a lot of blame for leaving HBO and things of that nature. You know what I mean? But there's a whole storyline to that. You know what I mean? We could, go back and forth about what happened there. But basically, Al Heyman started being his advisor, advised him that there was some money on the table there with HBO and he could get some more cash. So they went back to the table. HBO said, "Screw you. We're not giving you any more money for this fight." But he said, "Look, I got this situation going on over here at Showtime. You don't want to match that?" It's like, "Nope. Peace." You know what I'm saying? So he goes to Showtime with Al Heyman, chasing the Bernard Hopkins fight. He has the fight with Fonfara, thinking he's going to fight Bernard Hopkins next. Bernard Hopkins offers him the 75-25 split. You know that Superman is not going to take that when he's the freaking draw in Quebec City. You know what I mean? He's not going to take that. So Bernard Hopkins goes the opposite direction and goes to Kovalev. You know what I mean? So because the perception is that Bernard Hopkins is going to get more credit for beating a Kovalev than beating a Adonis Stevenson. I've never thought that Adonis Stevenson was scared of Sergey Kovalev. It was just business. You know what I'm saying? It was just straight business. Now Kovalev is talking how Adonis is scared of him. He's making Superman kryptonite memes and talking stuff after the Pascal fight and everything like that. Kovalev, what's his name? Adonis Stevens says, well, I wasn't impressed with the Pascal win. He goes in there, fights Bika, and right after that Bika fights, he's like, let's get it on. The WBC mandated that this fight happen. They couldn't come to an agreement, so they goes to the first bid like everybody else does, like Gary Russell and Lomachenko did before them. You know what I'm saying? This is the quickest way to make any fight. At least one of the quickest ways to make a fight is going to a first bid. Oh shit, I'm running out of batteries. Anyway, one of the quickest ways to make a fight is going to a purse bid. You know what I mean? Everybody knows that. So I just don't understand. If you really want to make this fight, why would you pull out of a purse bid? You wasn't going to control the promotion anyway.
In a letter that Kathy wrote to, that was made public, wrote to Yvonne Michelle, the manager of Stevenson, she basically explained that while they want the fight to happen, they want the fight to happen on HBO or HBO pay-per-view. That's the only way. And also that they will require a 50-50 split of all revenue in order to consummate this deal. I go to you on this one, Shawn. Your reaction to Team Kovalev pulling out of the fight, and then what they're trying to do, they're trying to hash out a negotiation, trying to hammer out a deal today.
Hey, I think Natty answered it himself. It's business. Who has has all the support now behind them? Stevenson? No. Stevenson has done nothing since he won the title off of Dawson, except run away from a signed contract to fight Kovalev. Kovalev has went on and cleared out the division with the two biggest guys outside of Stevenson and beat them both convincingly, and went on the road to get both victories. So he's the one that has all the push behind him right now. So at this point, I think he's just using smart business. You're not going to be manipulated and pushed into doing something that doesn't benefit you. He's going to renegotiate and use everything possible at your disposal to get a little more of the pie, which, he's done what he needed to do. He beat Hopkins and gave away lots of money, and he fought Pascal in Canada and gave away lots of money to get these big fights, to put Stevenson in a position where he couldn't really justify not taking the fight. So why is he going to continue to give away everything to give away the biggest fight on the horizon for him? He's worked hard to get this fight, so now I think it's fair that he's going to try to get what's fair for him as well. Just like Stevenson listened to Al Heyman and pulled out of the contract fight before because there was money on the table, then Kovalev is doing the same now. Why are you going to be dictated to when you've done everything and the other guy hasn't done anything? This is the same guy who was in Quebec watching the Pascal fight, criticized you, but didn't go on camera to criticize you, and didn't go face-to-face with you, which most people would, to sort of build up the fight and use it as a good podium. No, he did it on the side, to Bernard Hopkins where nobody saw it. I think a lot of the stuff he says is full of shit, so I don't listen to too much of what he says. But come on, we know Kovalev is not ducking. Kovalev is just trying to get what's fair, and I don't think anybody should hold that against him.
Well, the thing is,
go ahead, Danny.
Yeah, Kovalev, if he wants to be the recognized champion, I know there's a lot of people, behind him doing this. Go Kovalev, you're the man of the division. But he's not the man. He's not the man. He's not the man. He has a bunch of trinkets around his belt, but he's not the man. Like it or not, Adonis Stevenson is the champion in the division. All those belts, all that WBO from Nathan Cleverly, you know what I'm saying? All that Tavares Cloud and Shumanov WBA and IBF belts, they're meaningless. In this particular division, the WBC reigns supreme, and Adonis Stevenson has that. He has the WBC, he has the ring, and he has the lineage. straight up. And if Kovalev wants that, Kovalev has to step up to Adonis Stevenson and fight. And if he thinks he could beat him, just beat his ass, and nobody could dictate shit to you after that. That's it.
But that's what people know.
Go and knock him out.
Let me read an excerpt here from the letter. Wait a minute, Shawn. Let me read an excerpt here what Kathy Duva from the letter Kathy Duva wrote to Michelle. After taking all things into consideration, we decided to remain loyal to HBO, the network that has built every major star in boxing during the past 35 years, including Adonis Stevenson. Sergey is an HBO fighter. Adonis is a free agent. Therefore, if Adonis or anyone else for that matter wants to fight Sergey Kovalev, they will have to do it on HBO or through HBO's excellent pay-per-view distribution network.
I think she's full of shit.
True. Stevenson is a free agent. He doesn't fight for one network.
Why didn't she bring this up beforehand? She didn't say anything about HBO until the purse bid was scheduled. Until after she pulled out of the purse bid. She didn't say shit about. She knew the purse bid was coming. She knew this fight was coming. But as soon as the purse bid comes to the table, and she has to come to the table and match whatever she has to match, she pulls out, and HBO is all of a sudden a valid excuse for her. I don't think so.
But don't you see the hypocrisy of your argument? That you'll justify Stevenson listening to Al Heyman to avoid the fight, but then you'll rip Duva.
No, I'm not justifying anything. What I'm saying is it's so ironic. When Stevenson does it, everybody comes down on his head. When Kovalev does it, it's business.
They had a signed contract.
All right? It's business. When Kovalev does it, it's business. When Stevenson does it, he's a ducker. That's my point. That's what I'm trying to do. That's what I'm trying to say right here.
But they had a signed contract. That's the difference. If
there was a signed contract, you know that Kathy Duva would sue Stevenson for everything he has.
She did sue him.
And how did that go for her?
Yeah. We don't know. Nothing happened. We don't know what happened.
Nothing. Nothing. Because it wasn't valid. It wasn't valid. Nothing. Because we would hear about that. About Superman the Ducker. Come on, man. You know this.
Yeah, and to his point, Kathy Duva, she will exploit a situation like that, and the fact that she didn't, that raises an eyebrow there.
Oh yes. And who wants to fight on the Kathy Duva card anyway? What's his name? Tsar Glaskov keep on getting these gift decisions and shit. You know what I mean? Come on, man. This is ridiculous.
Ultimately, for me, this whole thing is BS. They should be able to come together like an adult and hammer out a deal, be it on HBO, be it on Showtime, anywhere else. If Mayweather and Pacquiao can make a deal after all this was happening between them in the back and forth, Pacquiao's fighting a lawsuit against Mayweather, the contract beef, the contract squabbles with Heyman and whatnot, why can't they?
And you know what? No. A purse bid is not just for those two outfits. Rock Nation could get involved. Golden Boy could get involved. Top Rank could get involved. Like, hey, this might be some good shit. Everybody could throw their hat into the ring. So she's just paranoid that Heyman might win it.
And he has a point about Heyman, but about Kathy Duva, but I'm not even going to come from that angle. I'm just saying, as a boxing fan who wants to see this fight happen, they should come together and make this fight happen. Bottom line, quit the bullshit.
The fight's going to happen. You know, people just need to relax. I mean, it is business. There is negotiation. And what's the problem with having the fight on HBO? That's bigger than Kathy Duva. HBO is a network onto its own. They're the biggest network in boxing. Having the fight there, I mean, is definitely not a negative.
But she's pushing the HBO agenda because she has a relationship with them.
Well, he has a contract with HBO.
I mean, it's only natural, you know. I have a working relationship with.
That's just political posturing, because if she was with Showtime, she would do the same thing.
Exactly. She has a working relationship with these guys, so she's going to push in that direction. That's all that is.
But, you know, they have a contract with HBO. That's where their fights are. Stevenson is a free agent. He doesn't have a contract with Showtime at this point. So obviously this is a negotiation ploy, but I mean, at the same time, what's the problem? Stevenson,
it's Stevens.
he could easily say,
the other side of that is, go ahead, Shawn.
Go ahead.
Stevenson could easily say, fine, I'll fight on HBO, but I want 60%. That's the part of negotiation.
Okay. I'm going to run with you on that. I'm going to run with you. Go ahead.
But the other side of that, Kathy Duver in the letter says she wants 50-50, so.
Yeah.
But she knows she's not going to get everything she asked for.
Nope. I mean, I'm going to run with you on that. He has a contract with HBO, and he might have to fight on HBO. But that has nothing to do with the purse bid. Why pull out of the purse bid? The purse bid does not say you have to fight on any particular network. The purse bid does not dictate which network you fight on. I'm
not sure how it's going to play out, so I can't really say.
Yeah, you'll never know how it's going to play out because there's there probably going to be several people involved. She's just making sure that it's not Heyman. She doesn't like that guy.
Obviously, I mean, lots of people feel the same. But if Heyman won the first bid, does that mean that would they still have to fight on HBO? Wouldn't he have more control of what happened with the fight?
Of course he would, but he's not guaranteed to win the purse bid. And I'm sure if HBO doesn't really rock with Heyman either. So if Heyman wins a purse bid, HBO is not going to deal with him, even though they should because they're businessmen. I mean, that's kind of childish, in my opinion.
But Heyman is just an advisor. He's not a promoter. So I mean,
no doubt.
No doubt, but Heyman is such a power player. So advisor,
yeah, come on, let's not play games here. We all know he's not a promoter, but he holds a lot of influence.
I know, but look at Khan.
He's basically running the sport right now.
Would Khan have a problem fighting on HBO? Hello?
Go ahead, Shawn. I'm having my computer froze on me right quick, but continue on.
No, I was just going to say, does anybody think that Khan would have a problem fighting on HBO? He's also advised by Heyman. So
I'm sorry for the technical difficulties, the delay. My PC froze on me right quick, but he was asking whether Khan would be about Khan. My thing is with Amir Khan, he's so thirsty for a big fight with Mayweather and Pacquiao. It doesn't matter. He will take whatever deals are being offered.
Khan is annoying.
But he's still, advised by Heyman. That's my point.
Well, Khan. Khan is not fighting on HBO right now. I think because of the Heyman factor, though. That's the only reason he wouldn't fight on HBO. And in order to deal with Khan, you have to deal with Heyman. That's it. That's one of the reasons why what's his name, Adonis Stevenson left HBO because they didn't want to deal with Heyman. They didn't like Heyman getting involved in the business. Like we got this. We already told him what he's gonna get. Don't tell him he could get more. What are you talking about? You know what I mean? But you're interfering. So they don't really rock with Heyman like that.
Yeah. This is interesting discussion here. Interesting discussion on the Pound for Pound Boxing Report. Back and forth debate, which is what I love. I don't mind the game of competitive banter. You're listening to the Pound for Pound Boxing Report live YouTube show with Mr. Natty Turner, Shawn Newton joining us live from Taiwan. Let's move on and talk about the news. A couple of fights that was kind of announced today or this week. as it looks like it's going to be an IBF eliminator between Tim Bradley and Shawn Porter for the IBF eliminator for the IBF welterweight belt, currently being held by Kell Brook. And also, Miguel Cotto announced that he's going to be fighting, that he will fight Daniel Gill June the 6th, I believe. I'll go to you on this one, Natty. Your thoughts on this elimination bout between Bradley and Porter, as well as Cotto fighting Daniel Gill?
I like the Bradley Porter fight. You know what I mean? I'm like, yes, that's a great matchup to me. You know what I mean? I'm not gonna say who I think gonna win, but you know, it's a good matchup. Let's say that. I like how their styles clash, and it's gonna look aesthetically pleasing in the ring when it finally happens. And I'm glad Shawn Porter accepted that, because it seems like everybody was turning down the eliminator, man. Nobody wanted the damn eliminator. Frankie Gavin, Amir Khan, nobody wanted that damn eliminator. So even if Kell Brook goes and fights Frankie Gavin, his next fight is against a top tier welterweight. You know what I'm saying? Because they're banging it out for that. I don't know why Khan wouldn't get involved in that. I just don't understand. And as far as the Cotto fight, look, man, I don't want Cotto fighting Daniel Gill, but nobody who said that Daniel Gill was a good opponent for Triple G, it should be upset about this fight. If you said that Daniel Gill was a bum and Triple G shouldn't be fighting, scream from the rafters, please. You know what I'm saying? Say this is a cherry pick. Say, oh, this is a crap fight, blah, blah, blah. But if you said that Triple G fighting him, you know, like I said Triple G fighting him was a step up. I didn't say he was a killer or anything. I didn't say he would win. But I said, okay, he's fighting a true middleweight. Let's see what he does with him. You know what I'm saying? But if you said that he was a good opponent for Triple G, he should be a good opponent for Miguel Cotto, who's only had one fight at the middleweight division against a wobbly knee Sergio Martinez.
I'm not mad at Porter and Bradley either. I think it has a potential to be a really good fight. I think it's a guaranteed really good fight. I'm not willing to predict, because it's 50-50 to me. It all depends on how Bradley looks, how he performs, his mindset. Cotto fighting Gill, I mean, it is what it is. Cotto is his own boss. And let's face it, Cotto, he's a bit of a diva. I mean, you're not going to tell him who to fight. You're really not. Do I want him to fight a Triple G next, or another top-tier middleweight? Sure, but, you know, given what we know about Cotto and how dogmatic he is at the negotiation table, I mean, it is what it is with this fight. So, do I want him to fight someone better? Yes, but you're not going to move him. He's going to fight who he wants to fight at this point. Your thoughts, Shawn?
It's like I said before, some fans are just so quick to rip and criticize everything. I mean, it's the same as we were both just saying with Stevenson and Kovalev. A lot of it is negotiation, you know, plans. You know, people have plans for their future, and they have, like, directions they want to go. I mean, you know, obviously at this point, Bradley and Porter are in a position where they need to fight each other to get that pinnacle fight, because Bradley looked bad against Chavez in his last fight, and Porter just got beat. So if he wants to get another rematch against the guy who beat him, he's going to have to, like, do something. Otherwise, people are going to say, like, you just got beat. Why do you deserve it? And for Brook, it's smart because, you know, it's sort of set up so these guys have to go to the UK to fight him. So he's comfortable. He has to fight a good fighter. But in the meantime, he can fight a local domestic fighter who's going to sell a lot for him in Gavin. And then he can wait for these guys to play off each other. And he knows that that's going to be a huge fight in the UK for him against big, legitimate fighter. But, I mean, he's just making extra cash on the side. I mean, he's getting more money fighting a guy who's a local guy. And then he's got a big fight who's going to be also in his backyard. So for him, it's a smart decision as well. I mean, as far as Cotto, we know Cotto is in negotiation or was in negotiation with Canelo, which is going to be a huge, huge pay-per-view fight. And I mean, at this point, he just wants a guy who's going to give him a payday, keep busy, And, you know, Gale is a legitimate fighter. I mean, he's legitimate top 10 160. He's a two-time 160 champion. I mean, people love to rip him because he got beat by GGG. It's not that they love to rip Gale. They love to rip GGG to say hasn't fought anybody. So they rip all his opponents. You know, they want him to fight Lemieux. But when he beats Lemieux, they're going to say, oh, that guy got knocked out by Rubio. You know, they're so quick to rip the guy because they don't want to give him any credit. Gale is legitimate. I mean, does he have punching power? No. But, I mean, he's a tough boxer. And, I mean, Cotto hasn't really beat a legitimate fighter in, like, years. I mean, he lost to Trout, who also didn't have power, but was also a good boxer. And, you know, he beat Sergio, who we know now is, like, you know, on his last legs, literally. So this will be a good test to see how he does against the bigger guy. The only problem I have with it, and lots of people feel the same, is draining the guy down. Lower than he made Sergio fight. You know, 157, I think, is the weight. So yes, that's the negative, because it's a title fight. The linear champion having a you know, career 160 guy move down 3 pounds to fight him. And I mean, you look at Gale, he's a thin sort of guy who throws lots of volume and moves a lot. So we don't know how that's going to play on his body. So that's a negative.
Go ahead, Danny. Go ahead. Comment on that real quick. To be fair, he's not the first one to do it. Yeah. Paul Williams did it to Sergio before Cotto did it to him, and De La Hoya did it to Bernard Hopkins.
Yeah. No, I mean, I don't hold it against him, but I mean, that's my only criticism. As far as the fighter, I think it
sucks though. It sucks though. I don't like that shit.
I'll ask a question for both of you, and any of you two can respond. Do you think that Cotto, he's just waiting to cash out, taking this fight with Gale in order to cash out with a Canelo and a Triple G to close out his career?
Yes. Yes.
I could agree with that. And Cotto just won't be dictated to at this point, man. And, you know,
like I said, he's his own boss.
I got respect for Cotto, though. You know what I'm saying? Cotto has given me some good fights. Cotto has given me some good competition. Cotto has been in the ring with good dudes. So I'm not, like, going to jump on him when he wants to, you know what I'm saying, play around a little bit and use his muscle, you know what I mean, at the negotiation table a little bit. And the part of the reason why that fight with Canelo didn't happen, it was partially because, you know, he wasn't being able to flex his muscle like he wanted to at the negotiation table. Because, you know, Canelo's a very proud dude himself, you know what I'm saying? And he's, you know, he's going to budge, but only so much. Cotto needs you to bow down, basically, at this point. You know what I mean? Because he's had to bow down in the past, and he's ready to make dudes bow down. So that is what it is.
One final bit of news before we go to the previews and start to shut down the show. In an interview today with, I think, World Boxing News, you mentioned Sergio Martinez. Well, he basically announced that while he wants to fight, his knees are giving him so much trouble that he cannot even train, having issues with his meniscus, I think on both knees. So it looks like this is the end for Sergio Martinez. And I go to you on this one, Natty, and you can follow up Shawn. Given that this is probably the end of Sergio Martinez as a fighter, give a brief analysis, your thoughts on his career. He came up through the junior middleweight ranks, fighting tough guys, eventually moving up to 160, beat you know, fighting the likes of Kermit Cintron and others. Eventually moved up to 160, where he got a shot against. Well, he won the middleweight title. Made a succession of defenses at a certain point of his career. He was considered one of the top 3 to 5 pound-for-pound fighters in the world. Your thoughts on the career of Sergio Martinez?
I mean, overachiever there, man. This is a footballer. You know what I'm saying? Sergio Martinez is a footballer. He's a great athlete. You know what I mean? To those who don't know what I'm talking about soccer. To the U.S. people. You know what I'm saying? But
we know about it. I've had my own show talking about the World Cup. You need to check it out, bro.
Argentina, out of Argentina, you know, where football is religion there. So you know what I mean. And I heard he was pretty good. He didn't get started fighting until he was like 20, 21 years old. He gets into the gym, you know what I'm saying, and starts fighting there. He had to go to Spain to get his career started. And you know, he came up, you know, on the rough side of things. He didn't get anything handed to him. He had an early knockout at welterweight, or was knocked out by up and coming Antonio Margachito, Mr. Hand Raps himself. You know what I mean? But he recovered from that. Had a controversial fight at 154 with Kermit Cintron, where everybody know that he knocked Kermit Cintron ass out. You know what I'm saying? Got saved. You know, he had another controversial fight with Paul Williams in the first fight, and everybody know that he beat Paul Williams in that fight. But he got it was a split decision, I believe, for Paul Williams. And in the rematch, he left all doubt.
So,
Yo, B, that was like one of the nastiest knockouts I ever seen in my life, man. Perfectly timed. It was pretty much, it was almost the same exact thing, like Pacquiao and Marquez, just from the left-handed side, and just from the southpaw side. It was crazy, man. But yeah, he beat Kelly Pavlik in a fight that people thought that he would lose. I picked him to win, because Kelly Pavlik was just too limited in my opinion, and I thought that Sergio Martinez would outbox him. You know what I mean? He defended his title a few times. I mean, he's a two-time champion, and he wasn't supposed to be. You know what I mean? Given his background and how he came up, he was supposed to be nothing but a journeyman, and he became a two-time champion and a much avoided guy as well. You know what I mean? Because just remember that when Miguel Cotto was at 154 and Sergio was at 154, trying to get fights, Miguel Cotto wouldn't fight him back then. You know what I mean? Miguel Cotto would not fight Sergio back then. And they took Sergio's title from him because he was holding the belt, the WBC belt, at 154 and 160 at the same time. And the WBC said you can't do that. You got to take one or the other. Then they took his belt.
Gave it to Julio Chavez Jr. Basically gave it to
not even. Oh, that's before that. You know what I mean? Okay. They vacated the 154 one, and then he had the 160. Then they took it from him, called him a champion emeritus, and gave it to Chavez, and was calling Chavez their champion because it's Jose Sulaiman's godson and shit. I mean, he went through a whole bunch of boxing politics, man. You know what I mean? So I give credit to Sergio Martinez. You had a great career. You know what I mean? I think you only got one gift decision. There's a lot of people out there, a lot of legends in the sport that have multiple gift decisions. You know what I mean? So they give you shit for the one gift decision that you got. You know what I mean? I think Sergio Martinez had a great career, man. Definitely great career, and you know, he did what he could, man. He did what he could with what he was given, what was put on the table for him.
Looks like this is the end for Sergio Martinez. Shawn, your thoughts on his career?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, here's a guy that had to come up the hard way. And I mean, like Natty said, I mean, nothing was given to him. I mean, actually, you know, they made it real tough. You know, he was the guy that was put in position to be the opponent in most of those fights, and people thought he would lose. And he refused to lose. Or at least if he did lose on the cards, he made it so compelling that, you know, basically all the fans forced rematches and forced, like, more out of him. And, you know, he was an old guy by the time he made a success. He went on and he had a good short career. It's a shame that age caught up to him. You know, maybe all the years of football and bike riding caught up to his knees. And now, you know, he can look back and say that he did what he wanted to do. He got paid. You know, it was nice that he got that big Cotto fight before retirement. And, yeah, I mean, I think anybody would be proud to have a career that he ended up having, especially starting so late.
Absolutely. Let's move on and start shutting down the show by talking about the fights that's happening this weekend.
I gotta be out, Mike.
Doubleheader on 8. Okay. Thanks for joining us, Natty Turner. Joining us. Thanks for joining us on the show.
It's easy. All right, Shawn Newton.
No problem. Okay, me and you, Shawn. Let's talk about the fights that's happening this weekend as we close down the show. This episode, doubleheader on HBO. Ruslan Provodnikov fighting Lucas Matthysse. Terence Crawford fighting Tomas Dulorme. Crawford moving up to 140 pounds officially. And also on those fights on HBO. On Showtime, Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. fighting Andres Fonfara. And I think it has the potential to be a really good light heavyweight bout. Talk about the HBO doubleheader first. Provodnikov Matthysse, on paper, this has the look to be a war. Back in 50-50 fight for me, Provodnikov lost. I know you felt he beat Algieri. I disagree on that. Gets a Matthysse, who's still on the comeback trail following his loss to Danny Garcia. Matthysse is a little bit more vulnerable. I think he has the chin is not as good as Provodnikov, but Provodnikov can certainly be hit. Your assessment of this fight, which has, again, the potential to be a war here.
I think Matthysse has better skills. And I mean, I think after a couple of his last fights, he's seen that going in there and just relying on power isn't necessarily working out for him. Against Garcia, it hurt him. And against Molina, he got dropped 2 times and made what should have been an easy fight difficult. I mean, mind you, a great fight, but more difficult than it needed to be. And now he's in there against another beast. Talk about a guy that hasn't been given easy ways either. He's just had tough fight after tough fight after tough fight. Judah, Alexander, boom, boom, boom. It doesn't get nearly as much credit as he deserves with the caliber of fighters he's in there with. Ruslan is a monster, but, he's also stationary, a hooker. I mean, what's going to benefit Matthysse is he's a better boxer. His punches are straighter, and I think he's just going to break him down.
Let me interrupt you, Shawn. Let me interrupt you here. Do you think the succession back-to-back tough fights for Matthysse, do you think it has the potential to finally catch up with him in this fight?
It could. But I mean, with Molina, he did get knocked down 2 times. But I mean, relatively, I thought it wasn't that difficult a fight. I thought he won every round other than the rounds where he got caught by those big hooks to sort of the top of the head. So, and then he had other fights in between that weren't so tough. So I think he's still pretty fresh. I mean, it's been a while since the Molina fight, so I think it should be okay. And he knows what he's going in there against. So, and he's not too old. So I don't think it should really have an effect on him at this point. I mean, down the road we'll see how it affects. And we know Ruslan, he really takes a lot out of guys. Look at Alvarado. I mean, he was never the same after that fight. So
right.
That's what makes this fight so compelling because, we know both guys have their weaknesses and they're both monsters at the same time. So it'll be really interesting to see whose style prevails. I mean, I think Matthysse, who is the better fighter with the straighter punches, is going to win the decision. I can't really pick against Ruslan getting knocked out because we've never seen anything like that before. But a possibility is getting stopped on cuts because he does mark up quite a bit. And against a guy like Matthysse, I mean, that could play into the fights for sure.
Again, 50-50 fight for me. I'm leaning towards Matthysse because he's a better boxer. But again, if he stands there and just has an outright war with him, Provodnikov, the one thing you can say about him is he's tough, he has a good chin, and he can punch. And again, I'm wondering if all the succession of tough fights against top caliber opponents will wear on Matthysse and make sure in this fight. Let's move on to Crawford Dulorme. Crawford established himself clearly as the best lightweight in the world. I think he has star potential. Moving up to 140 to fight a Dulorme who's good. The problem with me is, Shawn, is Dulorme, he's a big mechanical. He's slow on his feet. And his punches, you can tell what he's doing. He's basically a 1-2 guy. Straight jab, right hand, double jab, right hand. He has a decent left hook, but he doesn't throw it enough. And I just think the overall variety, the overall skill set of Crawford, plus his ability to move side to side, and his overall ability will be too much for Dulorme. So I'm going to pick Crawford by decision here.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, Dulorme, he's a good fighter, but I mean, he's not upper echelon. He's been exposed a little bit and shown his weaknesses. Whereas Crawford, I mean, we know he can fight at 140. He's done it already. So this isn't like it's a big step up. He's been there. So this is just another fighter. Mind you, Dulorme is a big fighter. He's not a small 140 guy. I mean, didn't he fight a couple fights at 147 as well? So that could play an issue early on, the fact that he is physically bigger and also long. But like you say, I mean, he's more stationary. He's slower. I think Crawford is just going to start timing him. You know, Crawford, the way he is, maybe it'll take 2 or 3 rounds for him, and then he will adjust, and then I think he will just buzzsaw through the guy, and I see Dulorme getting stopped.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's move on to the Chavez fight. The ladies, they talked about this last week during the ladies episode. They talked about Chavez Jr. and Fonfara. I think Deandra LaBeouf of BackCulture.net, she attended the press conference for Chavez Jr. today, as well as the media workout. I agree with Deandra said last week. I think that Fonfara has a real chance to beat a Chavez Jr. I'm sorry, I'm just really sour on Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. I think his dedication is not there. I think he's a bit of a privileged, pampered fighter. And what we do know, and Deandra, she said this last week, is that Chavez Sr., he really did not want this fight for, he didn't want this fight for his son. He thought Fonfara would be too tough. Fonfara, a natural light heavyweight, really good size for the division against a Chavez. I think he has a really good chance to outwork him. I think he can go to Chavez Jr.'s body like no other fighter can. I'm really leaning to what I'm saying. I'm going to pick Fonfara to win this fight.
Okay.
I am. I'm just really not impressed with Chavez Jr. He's okay. He's tough. He's a really good body puncher. But I think if Fonfara can really establish the jab, give him some movement, not a whole lot. We all know Chavez can hit. And what kind of shape is he really going to be in?
These are always.
Is he going to be in prime shape?
Yeah.
Is he going to be in prime shape? Because I've never really seen it before.
These are obviously questions with Chavez, right? I mean, his dedication to the sport. You know, a coddled guy who was growing up with lots of cash and everything he needed and has never shown so much determination. But, you know, I think Fonfara is a pretty limited fighter that was made to look good by a one-handed fighter in Stevenson and isn't that great and didn't look so good in his last fight. And I think Chavez is just going to kick his ass. And he's tough. Maybe he will go to the decision, but I could see him getting stopped late by Chavez.
There's a difference. There's a difference between Chavez hitting middleweights that he's 20 pounds bigger than, and hitting a full light heavyweight. And for me, Chavez, he showed me. He hasn't showed me anything. I mean, he showed me enough, but how good is he really?
He's going to be better than Fonfara.
We will definitely see on that. We will definitely see on that. Any other? I know the news. It was some news that was broke over the past few days. So before we start to close the show down, any other news that you've heard of this been happening this week?
Well, I mean, just, you know, like we were talking about before, a lot of the good fights have been made, but a lot of hate going towards them, like Cotto, Brooke, and Gavin. I mean, Khan and Algieri, people want to know why he didn't jump in and take that fight with Brooke. But I mean, I think everybody knows that he's aiming for bigger goals. And is there any question that the Brooke fight is not going to be there down the road for him? It's a big domestic fight. So regardless of what happens for either guy, that's always going to be sort of the go-to fight that both of them have there for a quick payday. So, I mean, I think the Algieri-Khan fight's going to be good. And I don't see why people are so quick to criticize and rip it. I mean, you know, Algieri is a good boxer. Khan is a good boxer. Obviously, Khan does very well against boxers, and people can say he's trying to protect his chin, but whatever. Like, I mean, you know, people are so quick to rip a guy. Like, just because he has a bad chin, I mean, he's fought legitimate fighters. I mean, his last 2 fights have been legitimate 147 guys. And I mean, Algieri, this is his first legitimate fight at 147. His last fight with Pacquiao was like 144. But I mean, he showed that he can carry the weight. He couldn't even make 144. You know, he had a hard time making that weight. So he is a legitimate 147 fighter. So I think this is a legitimite fight. I think it'll be a good fight. And I don't see why people are so quick to rip.
I have to push back. If Algieri had issues dealing with the speed of Pacquiao, how is he going to deal with the speed of Khan?
But they're different fighters. I mean, Pacquiao is an aggressive power puncher. Khan is a boxer who uses behind the
But the thing is, the similarity are between both fighters. They both have a tendency to dart in and out, step back at an angle, and before you can really get your feet set to counter out of the way. That's what Khan does when he's at his best. Pacquiao did the same thing to Algieri when they fought. I just think that Khan, look, I still have questions about Khan's chin. Let him fight a real puncher at 147 and really get hit by there. We see where he's at. Even though he's improved, even though his ability to take punishment is better as he's moved up, as he's making the weight easier, the questions about his chin are still there. But in terms of this fight with Algieri, I just think that he's going to win rather easily. His ability to move in, the speed, the ability to go up and down on Algieri, I think he makes Algieri come forward to him. It's a relative easy fight for him.
That doesn't take away the legitimacy of the fight. I mean, Algieri is a guy who just fought the top guy at 147. You know, for years and years, people defended Floyd Mayweather because he wouldn't fight guys who were boxers. He only fought flat-footed guys who were stationary in front of him. And now you're going to expect Khan to specifically jump up against a big punching guy who would be a threat only because of that, and maybe throw away a big money fight against a Floyd and a Pacquiao. I mean, this is...
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying there are questions there's still questions about him, even though he is an improved fighter, and specifically questions about his chin. That's all I'm saying.
But I don't think it's a question. Everybody knows he's got a bad chin, and that's why his fights are exciting, because, you know, with any big shot, I mean, it could change the momentum of a fight. No one would say Danny Garcia is a better fighter than Khan, but he still has the knockout victory. And then going up to 147, I think lots of people would still think that Khan would beat Danny Garcia at 147, even though Garcia knocked him out. So, I mean, this makes boxing exciting. My point is, I just think we're getting some good fights. So let's just enjoy them and not be so quick to rip dudes who obviously, I mean, are looking for the future and have financial gain as their incentive, but are still fighting legitimate guys. I mean, we talked about Frankie Gavin and Brooke. It makes sense. And then fighting the winner of Porter Bradley. Great fight. But both of those guys are in a position where they need to do that to get there. You know, they don't have any momentum behind them. And then Cotto against Gale. You know, this is his first defense. So, I mean, you know, after this, then he can get the big fight with Canelo, which we expect that's going to happen because it's going to be a huge pay-per-view fight, probably over 3 million fights sold. And then, you know, for Khan, who's still holding out, hoping that he can get a fight with Manny or Floyd, doesn't look likely because those guys will probably fight each other and retire. So who knows what either one of them is going to do afterwards. But, I mean, he still holds out, hoping that he would get that fight. So at this point, fighting a guy like Algieri is legitimate until we see how the landscape unfolds. And then, you know, he's young. Obviously, he's going to step up because he's always stepped up and fought great fighters. So I don't understand why people are so quick to throw out the word ducker and be so critical. That's my point. I mean, they are solid fights.
One last point before we end the show. We mentioned Roman Chocolatito Gonzalez had a press conference, I believe, today about his fight with Edgar Sosa. It's going to be happening May 16th at the former undercard of Triple G, undercard of a Triple G fight. Talk about Chocolate. We'll talk more about this fight the closer it gets to us. But talk about Chocolatito Gonzalez. And the deal that he signed with HBO, and the fact that he's finally going to get some legitimate exposure here in the United States.
Not to put him in the same breath as Salvador Sanchez, but I mean, you know, it's good because Salvador Sanchez was lucky that he got on all the Don King fights, a small fighter who otherwise wouldn't have got as much, you know, world recognition as he did. But because Don King had him on, same as Julio Cesar Chavez, right? You know, they had these great fighters, small fighters, who in the States wouldn't have got nearly as much push if they didn't have big networks behind them, sort of, you know, introducing them to the mass market. So, I mean, this is great for Chocolatito because every boxing head knows him and knows how legitimate he is. He's already had great Hall of Fame caliber fights. So, you know, for him, this is just that next step to becoming more of a household name. being on a big card with a guy like GGG and fights down the road. So, I mean, it's great, and, it's good for boxing. And at that weight, there are some great potential fights, that are sitting there for us. And anyone who loves boxing will love those fights because they're just going to be like action-packed, high caliber, quality fights.
And absolutely, I think we're going to close the show down on that note. The next episode of the Pound for Pound Boxing Report, we will do a recap of Provodnikov, Matthysse, Crawford, Dulorme, Chavez, Fonfara, and we may get more into the bout with Yamanaka, who successfully defended his title earlier today. Unfortunately, we didn't see it before the show started tonight, so we'll try to talk more about that on the next episode. Well, first of all, Shawn, for those, I mentioned Natty Turner's information. First, thank you for wearing the blue, for Royal Blue, for Autism Awareness Today, supporting the cause for Autism Awareness Today. Thank you for doing that for me on this episode. For those who are watching this on YouTube. For folks who want to talk boxing or anything else, let the folks know where you can find you.
Apparently, I'm trolling all over the YTBC, so I don't think it's trolling. I think we're just talking boxing. Just because our opinions are different, that's fine. It's okay. But yeah, I'm more than interested to discuss boxing there. I mean, we all love boxing, and that's what our passion is, and we just want to talk about it and expose people to it more and more.
And absolutely, if you want to find Shawn Newton, he's all over G+, he's all over the YouTube, all over the YTBC. So if you want to talk boxing, just look him up there on the next episode of the Pound for Pound Boxing Report. I mentioned we're going to be recapping the fights this weekend. We're also doing a preview of Anthony Durrell. He's going to be fighting Badu Jack, defending his super middleweight belt. Daniel Jacobs, he's going to be fighting on the undercard. That fight will be on Spike TV. Also on HBO, Vladimir Klitschko, the heavyweight champion of the world. He will be defending his belt against Brian Jennings in New York City. So we will be talking about those bouts. And we may talk about Kazuto Ioka. He's fighting for a flyweight title, junior flyweight title, I should say. So we may talk about that as well. So I want to thank, again, Shawn Newton for joining us. Thank Natty Turner, the Blackbird Sugar, for joining us early in the show. For the Blackbird Sugar, Natty Turner, for Shawn Newton. I am your host, Michael. This has been another episode of the Pound for Pound Boxing Report. You guys have a good evening, good night.